electoral forums, we will have the race for Public Utility District Commissioner. Andrew May is our moderator today, and I herewith turn the meeting over to Andrew.
Thank you, President Kai. And first of all, I want to take a moment to thank not only the PABA board, but especially Debbie and Sean for helping us put this together, all the work that's been done, Edna for allowing us to use this spot. And we certainly have to thank two magnificent young men, Tyler Diltz and Jason Gladfelter, who are filming this, having this up for different folks to pull up at your convenience. And once again, the PABA wants to give a very heartfelt thank you to these gentlemen. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, members and guests, fellow Zoom participants, good morning and welcome to another beautiful day in Port Angeles. And it really is, because we live in a representative form of democracy. In theory, we listen to the candidates and we decide to vote for that person who we feel would best represent us in the matters at hand. Today, we are starting this election season with the PUD race, the Public Utility District. And this can affect the citizens in Clallam County in many ways. Not just obviously your rates for energy, but this will also help business expand here if we have adequate energy. And in today's questions of climate change and dams, what will be the future uses and availability of energy? With that, today we have our two candidates. Let me introduce them. They will take the table and I'll then give you the rules to the debate. First of all, we have no incumbent, so both are challengers. Let me introduce first Patty Morris. Patty, as we come up here, welcome very much. Thank you so much for participating in the debate.
Thank you.
And her opponent, Rick Pastel. Rick, once again, the same thing, welcome. So you know how it works. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves, any reasons they want to run. After that, if they would like, they can take an additional 2 minutes to explain, continue, or refute what their opponent has said. We then move to questions from the audience, but I want everyone to understand that we always take questions from our membership first. It's one of the best privileges of membership. And then finally, we go to a 2-minute close. With that said, it was Patty, I believe, or was Rick, right, that won the sophisticated guess the number. So Rick, you will start with a 5-minute introduction as soon as I get back to my seat. And Rick.
Good morning. Let me first thank the Port Angeles Business Association for this opportunity. I'd also like to let you know that I'm nervous, so I want to get that out and in front. I'll begin by providing you with some information about myself, and then I'll tell you why I'm running to be the Commissioner for District 2 of the Clallam County PUD. I am 62 years young. I am an honorably discharged veteran of the United States Navy. I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics. I have a master's degree in economics from the Portland State University. And I have over 30 years experience in the Pacific Northwest electric utility industry. Here's why I believe I am qualified for this position. As I've said, I have over 30 years of progressive responsibility in the Pacific Northwest electric utility industry, primarily focusing on rural electric utilities like Clallam County PUD and their issues with the Bonneville Power Administration. My experience ranges from planning to operations to regulatory. Specifically, I spent 14 years in power supply operations, and during a significant portion of this time, I was the risk manager for power supply. In this role, I was responsible for managing over 300 megawatts of load, valued at the time at over $100 million. This role required analytic skills, an eye for detail, industry and market knowledge, ability to endure and work under stress, technical background, industry and market knowledge, and the ability to endure and work under stress. I have also worked on numerous BPA rate cases, representing rural electric customers like you, and providing input on many of BPA's business practices, which details how Bonneville works with their customers. Thus, I have a well-rounded background in almost all aspects of the electric utility industry, but especially with respect to rural electric utility issues with the Bonneville Power Administration. I believe my skills, experience, expertise will translate to this position and will help me to be a very good commissioner. I am running for this position for multiple reasons. First, I want the PUD to continue serving the residents of Clallam County with affordable power and water services. Second, I have spent almost my entire professional career working in the Pacific Northwest electric utility industry. Thus, I know a lot about the industry, and fortunately, I find it both intrinsically and intellectually interesting and challenging. The third reason that I'm running for this position is that I believe that almost every person in Clallam County is dependent upon electricity to one extent or another, and thus the decisions that the PUD commissioners make are important. The electric utility industry in the Pacific Northwest is complex and takes years to truly understand. I have that understanding, which I believe will enable me to make policy-level decisions for the PUD that will lead to a sound future. I believe the PUD commissioners play an important role both in the local area and the regional electric utility arena. Some decisions the commissioners make literally cost their customers money. I believe it helps to have commissioners that understand the industry in the Pacific Northwest in order for them to make good decisions for both the PUD and the customers. I believe my experience, my interest, and my industry knowledge will enable me to make sound business and policy decisions for Clallam County PUD. My goals, if elected, would be to keep rates as low as possible while ensuring the Bonneville Power Administration has sufficient power supply resources to meet power demand. I hope you will entrust me with your vote. Additional information can be found at my website at www.electrickpascal.com. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And now, Patty, 5 minutes.
Good morning. I am Patty Morris, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to PABA members today. I am a longtime PABA member of this organization and really appreciate everything you do for our community. I have lived in Port Angeles for 20 years. I moved here from Tucson, Arizona, where I spent 28 years at Tucson Electric Power Company, handling every aspect of utility services. I have extensive experience in utility facilities, including generation, transmission, distribution, rates, strategic planning, budgeting, emergency preparedness, broadband, and renewable resources, including demand-side management. I own a small consulting firm and am a realtor. I have worked for Port Angeles School District and the Sheriff's Office providing grant writing and project management. I wrote the draft emergency response plan for the PUD as a volunteer. I had assigned to me throughout my career a number of large customers. I had at one point all of the Las Vegas hotels for energy contracts, renewable, and I have installed demand-side management and conservation systems in Caesar's Palace, Marriott hotels, and all of the Hilton hotels. I'm very familiar with what we need to do for conservation and to save costs. I was top 3 out of 14 applicants for the position to replace Hugh Hafner. I received over 49% of the vote in the primary vote, and I appreciated all of those votes from our citizens. A PUD commissioner needs to have a combination of utility experience and community knowledge to understand the impacts of decisions on our community. I am a small business owner And so I certainly understand what the issues are with the small business here and how hard it is to do business, especially in the COVID-19 situation we are in currently. Our community has challenges with the average age of citizens, small business needs, schools, and government. We need to continue to strive for low rates, reliability, and working towards integration of renewable resources without impacting rates. I have seen the challenges from every part of this county, and they are great. We have a lot to work on. And I believe PUD is not only the provider of power and water services and some sewer, but they are also a community member that needs to help be a leader in our community to solve a lot of our issues. I was elected to the Charter Review Commission in 2007 and am on the current commission where we're dealing a lot of the community issues right now. I am past president of the EDC, Port Angeles Association of Realtors, past vice president of Olympic Peninsula Humane Society, past secretary of the Port Angeles Education Foundation, past treasurer of the North Olympic Peninsula Resource and Conservation District, past board member for the Peninsula Development District, past chair of the campaign cabinet for United Way, current officer for Fairview Grange, Peninsula Dream Machines Car Club, and a member of the League of Women Voters. I have invested in our community. I have seen what's needed all across the board here. And I not only have that experience, but I have vast energy experience that I believe I can go to work with. I am also endorsed by the National Women's Political Caucus of Washington, Sheriff Benedict, Diane Hafner, the wife of Hugh Hafner, the prior commissioner, and numerous other citizens. I thank you for your time and I appreciate your vote and I look forward to the questions today.
All right, thank you, Patty. Now, Rick, if you would like, you can take another 2 minutes if you want to expand, tell us more about you, some of your goals.
Like I said, my planks are to keep rates as low as possible while ensuring BPA has sufficient power resources to meet power demand.
Okay, very good. And Patty, anything else you'd like to add or before we get on to questions?
Oh, I think I'm great. Let's move to questions.
Then once again to everybody, those watching as well, I'd like to remind you this is being recorded, so at your convenience, there'll be a later information on how you can pull this up if you want to hear any answers again or something. With that said, our esteemed President Kai Alberg comes in with the first question, and we'll start with Rick. And the question is, what is your position on taking down any more dams in the Northwest, particularly the Snake River dams? Rick.
I'm opposed to removing the dams on the Snake River. There are many reasons why I'm opposed to that, but primarily it comes down to a rate issue. The least cost option for replacing the generation would lead to an 8 to a 10% rate increase. The information that I'm giving you today comes from the executive summary of the Columbia River System Operations Environmental Impact Statement, which is now final. So the 8 to 10% rate increase would be doing at least cost, which would involve using combustion turbines and other thermal generation, which probably isn't going to fly in today's world. If we try to do a zero carbon replacement, we're looking at a 9.5 to a 19.3% rate increase. And if you're looking for no thermal and zero carbon, you're looking up to a 50% rate increase. Like I said, these numbers come from this executive summary of the Columbia River System Operations Environmental Impact Statement, which was performed by the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers, the Bureau of Reclamation, and the Bonneville Power Administration. So I'm not just throwing these numbers out, they have been documented by these federal agencies.
And Rick, if I could interrupt for one moment, we are hearing that folks might be having a slight issue hearing with you. If you would either speak up, or if you want to take your mask off while you're talking, we're in the right distance, that's up to you.
Okay.
And I'm just responding to some people typing in.
That's my response.
Yeah, okay.
I'll take it off
Okay.
first then.
So once again, Snake River Dams, what are we gonna do?
I have read the EIS, and boy, was that tough. I mean, that is a lot of pages of material to read, and I also read the draft summary and the final document. In the primary, I said that I had not made a decision about it. At this point, I believe that that document states that they should not be removed. If there is some movement to reinvestigate it, but at this moment I believe the case is closed on it, there would have to be a reinitiation of a program to look at removing those dams. But at the moment I have to take the position that those dams are going to stay with the final EIS document that has been done. And I believe that there is still a question as to whether the energy from those, the generation, is needed for our peak load, especially with the carbon neutral, carbon free initiatives that are coming. So I believe that at this time I would have to support them remaining, but I would be open to reviewing it should there be another document opening that up again. But for now, it's final.
And then obviously the concern on the dams has to do with salmon populations and how that impacts the whole environment. So to turn back to you, Rick, what would you do then to try to mitigate the problems with salmon if you're not going to remove the dams?
Well, currently, in 2018, the Bonneville Power Administration spent over $400 million on fish and wildlife programs. In 2019, Bonneville spent over $788 million on fish and wildlife. I haven't been able to track down the numbers for 2020, but it's my expectation that that value has gone up. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is that we, the ratepayers, are putting a lot of money into trying to recover the salmon species. And I understand that we have not been successful to date, but I still am convinced that technology will come through, that we will be able to find ways to be able to keep the dams and keep the salmon.
So then I hear that you believe that they're dedicated to solving that problem.
I am convinced, given the amount of money that we're putting into this issue, that yes, we recognize, when I say we, I'm speaking for the industry at this point, that it is an issue, and it's an issue that we take very seriously. And given the amount of money that we're putting at it, I really hope that some technology or some breakthrough comes in the near future that will help be able to allow us to keep the dams and the salmon.
And Patty, same question, what if anything should be done to mitigate the salmon? Do you believe that they're crucial to our whole economy and environment?
Well, I believe that salmon and fishery industry is very important to Clallam County. I would like to see support of anything that we can do to keep that industry moving here. But there are salmon mandates that are in place already that require, they're based on the hydroelectric production and legislation associated with the carbon content of our power supply. I believe that we need to ensure that the regulatory requirements are followed, and the obligations of the power producers, such as BPA, where there's cost or reliability impacts to Clallam ratepayers. I will take a look at to meet obligations in a way that minimizes those negative impacts to the salmon. And they're important as a global consequence to us. I've been a long-time environmental person. I also was involved in the Lower Elwha Dam removal projects. They're largely governed by federal and state authorities beyond the control of a PUD commissioner.
Anything else to add from anyone?
No, sir.
All right, let's move on to the next question from a past president. John Brewer asked, and we'll start, this goes to Patty first. How can the Clallam County PUD be better able to provide power to customers in the event of major power disruptions. So Cascadia events, floods, major storms. What can the PUD do to make sure we have adequate power here on the peninsula?
I think it is a dilemma for us. Because we are supplied by BPA 100%, or most generation, we do need to look for some additional reliable services and work towards that so that we have some backup. But I can tell you, being part of their planning and writing their emergency response plan, I'm very in tune with what the planning is. I'm also a volunteer for the Emergency Management Center at the county. I've written numerous grants related to emergency management here. I know what the resources are available to us from the state and the federal perspective. I know what they can bring in, such as mini power plants. They can bring in all kinds of systems to help us with that. But I think we've all heard that we need to be on our own and understand that if we have a Cascadia event here, we're going to be without power for probably some time. And I don't believe there's anything that we can do other than try to get people trained on what they need to do to sustain, have their supplies at home, and be prepared.
Rick, is there anything that we can do in case of a major power disruption?
That's a very difficult issue. There's only one connecting transmission line over to the peninsula from the Bonneville Power Administration. Therefore, if that line goes down, we would not have any power on the peninsula. Getting new transmission lines into this area, while I haven't researched that specifically, I have done in the past studies on trying to put transmission in, and it's almost impossible to build any new transmission lines because nobody wants that in their backyard. So it's a real conundrum. There's no generation over here to speak of. Therefore, I'm not sure. I think our hands are tied, basically. I'm not aware of anything that we could do in the short term to alleviate that issue.
Okay, then why don't I follow up on that question? What, if anything, is the responsibility of a public utility district in the time of an emergency?
I believe that we all as community members need to work together, and that includes PUD. They are in the process of preparing their employees, preparing everyone, having supplies available to try to keep in movement or in business, so to speak. But they have a very, very robust plan to help with emergency preparedness. And I know that they've been meeting with other entities here in the county to share resources, share equipment, share things that need to be done. So I believe they are stepping up as a community member to assist in what needs to be done from that, and also acquiring resources.
And same question to the record. What, if anything, does the PUD do a responsibility in the time of emergency?
You know, I think the best thing that the PUD could do is to get the word out. In other words, make sure the customers know that there is a single line that feeds the peninsula, and that if something happens to that line via Cascadia event, earthquake, whatever, that the customers should expect an extended period of time without power. So I guess my answer would be to make sure that that information is well distributed amongst the customers so that they would know what to expect in an event like that.
Anything else to add on this? All right, the next question comes from Edna, who is gracefully allowing us to use this place. She usually has the magic wand question. So this will go to you first. Let's see, Patty. What are Clallam County PUD's two biggest challenges moving forward, and what is the best way to address them? How would you solve these problems if you had the magic wand?
Well, the biggest concern that I see with PUD is the one source of generation here. And meeting the needs of the customers and reliant on one source of power for our whole area. It's become more apparent through the emergency planning that without that, we really have no power here. We can have transmission distribution, it doesn't do us any good. So we need to work very hard to secure up that reliability, discuss with the EPA alternatives to having one source of service here, and also look at some renewable resources that can help in the, shoring up some of that one source of power here. It is a big concern for me. The other issue that I think is a big concern is the CETA plan where we have to go to remove all of the carbon facilities, and that's a concern because that has to be replaced. I think there's discussions as to whether we have adequate power. We don't. A number of people are going to tell you we have plenty of power, some will tell you we don't, and I need to delve into that. But I think we have a big concern with, in order getting carbon-free, and what we're going to do to replace those resources.
And Rick, the same thing, the two biggest challenges, and what's the magic wand?
The two biggest challenges for Clallam County PUD. First, as you may have heard, Clallam County PUD was thrown out of the Public Power Council. I find that very disturbing. Currently, when the public utilities, or actually when all utilities go to renegotiate with the Bonneville Power Administration, and the new long-term contracts will begin in 28, and it's my understanding that discussions have already begun on the new contract. Since Clallam County PUD has been thrown out of PPC, that really, I think, hampers Clallam County. Most all the negotiations that happen with the Bonneville Power Administration happen in large arenas through the regional public power organizations, PPC, Public Power Council, Pacific Northwest Utility Conference Committee. These are areas or groups that allow public power entities to get together to, one, to get educated, two, to understand what the issues are, and three, to provide a unified front when we're talking to Bonneville about contracts. It's important to understand, Clallam County does not sit down with Bonneville Power and negotiate what the what the rates are that Clallam County pays to the Bonneville Power Administration. That is done in regional forums, and all public power customers pay the same preferred firm rate. So being thrown out of that organization means that no longer does Clallam County have input, no longer are we privy to the discussions that are going on, and I find this to be one of the biggest issues that needs to be resolved. The second issue I would point out would be the new Bonneville contracts, which will start in 2028. It sounds like a long time from now, but as I've told you, talking to my friends that are still in the industry, discussions have already begun, and we are not at the table, and I see that as a significant problem. Thank you.
All right. Patty, anything to add, especially public opinions on the Public Power Commission and the PUD being removed?
I have a little bit of a different opinion about it. I believe that, yes, it's important to be involved in the associations, and the Public Power Council was a group that we were involved in. I am hoping that we can pick up those negotiations and not have to be reliant on one association to make sure that we can secure the right contracts for the PUD. There are a number of avenues that I am told from experience that you can go in negotiation of the BPA contracts. It's been a number of years since I've done those, but I have done those energy type contracts. And with BPA, I understand that you look at a number of the different types of contracts you want to have, and then you start negotiations. And I understand that PPC is important, but I certainly hope we're not relying on one association that's a make or break for our PUD.
Anything to add on that, Rick?
No, sir.
Okay. The next question comes from Jim McIntyre, our chairman of our Public Relations and Government Affairs Committee. And Jim asks, and we'll start with Rick on this one, what is the PUD's role in providing wholesale broadband in underserved Clallam County? We have a lot of places in Clallam County that are having a hard time with internet and broadband. So does the PUD have a role in providing that?
I need to understand, should the PUD have a role? Or?
What is the PUD's role? I added the should.
Oh, I don't think, I'm not aware that the PUD has any role in broadband.
Should they have a role?
I believe they should. You know, I first started thinking about this question maybe 6 months ago. I was reading an article and it came up in the article, and I started to think about it, and I must admit I was rather ambiguous. I didn't really have an opinion at the time, and I guess that's because I hadn't really thought about it. Then the pandemic hit, and it felt like not only my world, but everybody else's world got turned on its head. And because of what I have experienced and what I have seen other people experiencing through the pandemic, my view of broadband has changed significantly. I now believe that every household should have access to broadband. And if that is something that the customers in Clallam County believe that the PUD should embrace, I am now fully on board with doing something like that.
Okay. Patty, what is the role of the PUD in broadband?
Well, unfortunately, I've been very involved in broadband, so on the West End over time, because I've done permitting for CenturyLink, Wave Broadband, a number of the providers, even the PUD out west. And I would say we need to define what it is to serve broadband out west. What is it? I think where we're missing the link, because we put in quite a lot of backbone infrastructure to the West End already. There was a federal grant several years ago that put in a broadband loop for CenturyLink. And I don't believe that's all been utilized already. I believe there needs to be, and I know that there's a grant right now that the port has that's working on a broadband study, and I actually was asked to talk to that contractor, which I did recently. And I think what we're missing is the business aspect of broadband, in that what is a customer needing? And there's two different things. There's a need and there's a cost. What does a person need, and what do they want to pay? What can they pay for that? And I think there's a large disparity on the West End because of the customers we have out in the rural nature as to what they actually will pay for something, and what would PUD's role be in broadband. And I personally don't feel that's been defined clearly, because we need to get to the customers, and putting in a backbone doesn't necessarily get you to customers. So I think there needs to be a community group that looks at what's a person willing to pay and what do they need, what's the minimum need for broadband. So it's a larger, very complex topic.
So you can be a little deeper thought there, Rick. Anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go on to the next question then. Kind of an interesting way to look at it. Viewer wants to know, what is the current PUD doing well? So we'll start on this one with Patty. What is the PUD, you think, doing very well?
I believe that they hire professional staff. They maintain a good level of employment numbers for people versus the amount of the need. I believe that they try to respond quickly to outages. I think they do a really good job at response. Again, it depends on some of the areas. I know that there's long distances, and with BPA involved, sometimes the outages on the west end are much longer, and I think we need to look at that. But I think they do really well with response.
Okay, very good. Rick, what do you think the PUD is doing well?
I'd have to agree with Patty. I think that the service that the PUD provides is incredible. You don't hear about a lot of outages due to vegetation, limbs falling down on trees. That tells me that they're doing a good job of maintaining the right-of-ways, which is what we would expect. To me, that's really the crux of what the PUD it provides. It provides electricity to its customers, and I think that is its biggest strength.
Okay, and now we'll go to the second part of the question. We're over with the love fest. Patty, the second part of this viewer's question was, if you're elected, what, however, would you work to change to make the PUD work better?
I would like to make sure that we're doing good resource adequacy for the PUD. I would like to see if we can enhance some of the reliability. I do want to maintain rates low, as low as possible, because our community just cannot afford rate increases here, so we must maintain the rates. And I would also like to see more citizen involvement in the PUD. I would like to see the ability for meetings to be recorded. I'm not so sure about having them at different times, but at least to be able to go back and listen, or such as you do with the other government entities here. And I think they're trying to open that up some, but I would like to see more citizen involvement in the PUD. And I'd also like to see a group that is set aside to look at renewable resources. There's a lot of people that have energy here that want to look at that, and I don't think we should stymie them. I just don't want to have rates impacted at this time, but I think it would be great to have some citizens groups that are identified that would like to work on those kinds of topics, but more open access for citizens and customers.
Yeah, very well. Rick, the same question. If you get elected, what are the things that you're running for? What would you like to help change or effectuate to make the PUD run better for its customers?
I think the first and primary goal I would have would be to reestablish our good relationship with our brethren in public power. Being thrown out of the Public Power Council is, I find, embarrassing. And it's something that would be my number one priority, to reestablish good relationships with other public power entities in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, very good. Anything else to add?
No, sir.
Now, since we're feeling good that everything is running well, we're going to try a question audio from one of our members. Hello, Mr. Matthew, you have a question. And can you start again? Yes, please start again.
This is kind of piggybacking on the idea of PUD being active with helping out broadband. 5G would help, the 5G technology would seriously help out connectivity issues, internet, things of that nature. As I understand, what is your view first on 5G and B on the PUD possibly being involved in helping to put 5G technology in place?
Very well, we'll start with Rick, and if you heard the question, it's twofold on 5G technology. Matt wants to know, first of all, what is your view on 5G? Is it good? Should it be allowed? And second of all, how would the PUD help facilitate that, get that out into the community?
So, what is my opinion on 5G?
Yes.
I've always been taught that the bigger the number, the better. So you would think that 5G would be better than 4G. My experience with 5G has certainly borne that out.
And if you heard, I think the question more goes to, there are a contingency of folks that very much worry about the health concerns, not only to humans, but to other species. So I'm going to assume that that's what Matt was trying to get to on the question of where do you stand on 5G? Is it a safe technology?
To my knowledge, it is.
And then, and your viewpoint is that the PUD, that's technology because 5 is better than 4. It's things that we should be moving to. Other infrastructures will be moving to incorporate that.
With the caveat that it doesn't affect the delivery and the PUD providing power and water services. To me, that is the crux of our business plan and the purpose of existence. If the PUD decides to branch out into broadband or in any other arena, my caveat would be as long as it doesn't affect the ability of the PUD to provide power and water services. If it starts to compromise that, then I don't think that we should go down that path.
Patty, 5G, what is your view? And what should the PUD do about it?
Well, Andrew, you know we've studied this with the
Yes,
Charter
we
Review
have.
Commission in detail. There's a difference with 5G in that if you hardwire, there is less impact than there is when you do microwave towers. So the concern that I have heard is with the wireless companies installing 5G for cell service. And I don't anticipate that PUD would be involved in 5G wireless service, but more trying to get to individual homes wired if they were to go that way. You know, there's a good number of people who are concerned with the 5G health issue, and I'm not sure really where that's going to go. But again, I'm with Rick. The core business is water and power services for the PUD. They are under RCW 54 legislation, which that is the primary service. And the reason it was started, the PUDs were started to keep costs low because costs were so high. So I would have a concern with moving into that business if it were to impact our water and power rates.
Anything else to add? Because then what I hear from both of you is inherently you have nothing against 5G as it stands now.
No, sir.
Right.
All right, very good. The next question, kind of an interesting one. As you've been talking to the public, and this one, let's see, we start with Patty. As you've been going out talking to the public since you've decided to run, what questions have come up from ratepayers? Has there been any overall concern? So what are you hearing on the streets?
Well, what I'm hearing in a lot of the community groups is the concern for low rates, the concern to be able to stay in business, for the PUD to assist with people who are behind in their rates, seeing what's available for that, and they've recently received some funds to help customers with their rates, with their bills. And that would be my concern, that the PUD is helping to step in and bridge this gap that we're going through with businesses to try to keep people viable right now in their homes and businesses. So that's my biggest concern that I'm hearing. The other is a lot of conversations with folks on the West End about what can we do to increase the reliability for the West End customers, not to incur those long outages they do when there's a tree in the line, you know, BPA's line, and they have to bring people from Olympia, and it takes 5 hours, and, you know, quite a few. So those are the things that I'm hearing. But the biggest issue is, you know, how can we stay viable with COVID-19 right now going on?
And Rick, same question. As you joined the race and been out there, what are you hearing on the street?
Well, this has been I've never run for public office before. This is my first time. And I don't think I could have picked a worse time. With a pandemic, I've lived up here in this area for about 3 years now, and I am retired. So therefore, I don't have a job to go to where you meet people. I belong to the YMCA, or used to, before they closed down, and I've met a few people there. But at the end of the day, I don't really know a lot of people up here. And therefore, with the pandemic, I haven't been able to get out and knock on doors. I haven't been able to force myself on people, unfortunately. Therefore, I really haven't been hearing a lot from feedback from people. What I have heard going to the PUD meetings is clearly everyone is concerned about rates and wanting to keep rates low. But unfortunately, I haven't been able to have a lot of one-on-one and face-to-face conversations with people, so I don't really have anything to give you there.
What question I have is, I know the PUD for years has been working on getting a solar farm up and trying to get in a sense, a cooperative with the community buying in on that. So with that, I'm going to start with you, Rick. What is your attitude, feelings about the PUD actually owning a solar farm, having it be joint ownership where individuals in the community can invest? Is that a viable way to get some renewable energy?
Yes, that's a viable way to increase renewable resources. My only caveat on that would be that the solar farm pay for itself. In other words, I would not ask the customers of the PUD to subsidize the solar farm. So if it pencils out where it comes in at lower than Bonneville's rates, then, or even with them, then I would be fully supportive. If it comes out that the PUD would actually have to subsidize the solar farm, in other words, the solar farm costs more than Bonneville's PF rate, then I would not be supportive of it.
Patty, same question on the solar farm.
That is something that I have heard from quite a few citizens, especially in Sequim, that they're very interested. The one solar farm they put in, which also has your electric vehicle charging stations over in Sequim, people are very happy with that and satisfied, and those that have purchased the the shares to be part of that. And I feel that community solar programs are very good, again, as long as PUD is not having to subsidize costs related to those. But there is quite a group of citizens that are very interested in seeing other community solar projects, and I'm not against that as long as it doesn't impact our rates.
Okay, very good. It's got the same thing there. And then we'll have time for one more question before we go to closing. And actually, Patty, I want to dovetail off of what you said, and we'll start with you on this. What does the PUD do to increase the times power is back onto the West End? What can you do?
Well, actually, back when I was working on the emergency response plan for them, I looked at getting a agreement in place where BPA could ask the PUD linemen to go out and respond to an outage. I think they have some issues related to union to work that together, but there is actually, we got an MOU in place where they could share resources to try to cut down the time. There's a little bit more work that needs to be done, but I think that would help, where the PUD crews could respond and then BPA would be charged for the time and vice versa. And I think that would help quite a bit, because it seems like the 5-hour time coming from Olympia is such a long period of time that could be cut down maybe by 2 or 3 hours. So I think that would help in working on other solutions to try to cut down the cost and try to identify specifically what those areas are. But I think they do a pretty good job at that. We just need to work a little harder on some more solutions around it.
And Rick, same thing. What can the PUD do to try to bring down those recovery times when power goes out on the West End?
Towards the end of my career, I got assigned to work in regulatory. And about, I think it was like 8-9 years ago, there was this new initiative sponsored by the NERC and FERC, and it was called the Energy Reliability Organization, ERO for short. Basically, the Energy Reliability Organization touched on every aspect of an electric utility's business. One of the criteria or one of the areas of regulation that they had to do with vegetation management. And it was called EOP 03 or something like that. But there are pages and pages of criteria that they recommend with respect to the distance between the vegetation and a certain voltage line. So there are pages and pages of these rules and regulations that have been compiled from all across America that utilities practice with respect to their maintenance, with respect to the vegetation management, and etc. I would look to see whether Clallam County PUD's vegetation management practices line up with these. And if they don't, then I would highly recommend that Clallam County would move towards these maintenance levels that are proposed in the ERO. If they are already meeting those, then I would feel satisfied that the PUD is doing everything it can to resolve that issue or to keep that issue from being a problem for its customers.
Anything else? All right, before we go to closings, I want to do a couple things. First of all, I want to remind everybody that we're here again next week at 7:30. We have the candidates for the judges on, so get your questions ready for that. But more importantly, before I go to closing, I want all of us to take a moment to really appreciate any members in the public who would put themselves in front of a grand inquisition and offer to be a public service. I really think that that is something admirable, and we thank you. With that said, you have 2 minutes to close, and Patty, you can start.
When I take my seat on the board, I will always remember that the PUD was formed by the people and for the people. I understand accountability, and my community is very important to me. I am involved in the Granges, and it was instilled in me that they worked hard to start the legislation for the PUD. I want to maintain that atmosphere of low rates and reliability that they started. You need a person that has common sense as we navigate to keep the rates low, ensure the system works when you flip the switch or turn on the faucet. And it is as simple as that to most customers. And you deal with challenges like integrated renewable resources. I have the business sense and background to make wise choices for our citizens. I ask for your vote, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Patty. And now, Rick, you have 2 minutes for a closing.
I'd like to first thank this organization for allowing me to speak in front of you today. I really appreciate it. The second thing is I think that the Clallam County PUD is going to be well served if either Patty or I get elected. I'm very impressed with what I've heard from Patty, and I think she's got a good head on her shoulders. I would appreciate your vote. I think I can hit the ground running. I understand how to work with Bonneville. I understand how to influence Bonneville. I understand the folks that work at Bonneville and in the power industry. So if elected, I will be able to hit the ground running. No time will be spent in me getting up to speed. I thank you very much again for the opportunity and for your time this morning.
All right, well, very good. Well, thank you. And with that said, President Kai, why don't you walk to the front and take over the meeting.
I'd like to thank the candidates for being with us today. I would like to thank all our members who logged into this call today, which is the first one of a series of 6 or 7 electoral forums. I'd also like to ask our members who participated today to give us your feedback. Please email us with comments. We are learning our way how to do this the best way possible, and your feedback is very welcome. We hope to see you again next week at the same time, and this meeting is adjourned. Have a great day.